What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a special type of video. It's your host Trey. In today's video, I'll be doing a side-by-side comparison of the Gemini jets 1 to 400 scale Delta Airlines Airbus A220-100. The model on the left was released in 2018, and this was when the Airbus A220 was still under the name of Bombardier CS100. And on the right side, this model was released in 2022, long after the name change. And the difference between both models is obviously the 4-year difference, and the model on the left side being made on a Herpa wings mold, and the model on the right side being made on the new Gemini jets and JC wings mold. I believe it's for both Gemini jets and JC wings. I'm not sure who owns it exactly, but it's probably JC wings. And the purpose of this video is to explore the differences, and the end goal is to determine which model is better overall. I'll just say this right now, each model has some qualities that are better than the other, and I'm not sure if both will balance out by the end, but we will see. I'd also like to say that I haven't done this type of video very often before, so if I stutter or if it seems that I'm having trouble narrating or describing what I want to say, it's just that I'm trying to get used to this new style of video and I still haven't found a format that I like to follow. So bear with me, it's a bit confusing and it's a new experience for me. And with that being said, let's get this started. So here's what both models look like side to side. On the left side, we have the model that was released in 2018, and on the right side, we have the model that was released in 2022. For pretty much the entirety of this video, that's how this format's going to go. The model on the left side is going to be the 2018 model, and the model on the right side is going to be the 2022 model. For the comparison, I'm going to follow the same style of observation that I do with my model reviews, starting up with the fuselage, then the wings, then the rear section of the aircraft, then the engines, then aerial features, landing gear, wing flex, gear balance, cockpit window printing, and that should be the end of it. I'll try not to take too long, but I can't guarantee anything. So starting up with the nose shape, this is probably one of the most talked about areas of a model aircraft. You can see they're pretty different, although the nose shapes they follow the same profile. However, the printing of the cockpit windows follows a very different profile, which I will talk about shortly. Overall, the nose shapes look pretty almost identical. I really don't see that much of a difference, except for the model on the right side. It looks a bit more pointy, and I think that one's actually more accurate in terms of shape, but the one on the left side is still pretty solid. So overall, both nose shapes are decent. As for the cockpit window printing, the model on the left side appears to have it pretty low, and when I checked some images of the Airbus A220, I noticed that the cockpit window should have been a little bit higher up on the nose, so therefore that makes the one on the right side a bit more accurate. You can see that the cockpit windows on the model on the right side, excuse me, had a little bit of an interruption there. The cockpit windows on the one on the right side are a little bit thinner than the ones on the left side, and I believe that's also a bit more accurate as well. So overall, so far, the newer model is taking the lead with respect to shape and detail of the nose. As for the rest of the fuselage, they're both pretty similar, except for the one on the right side has a lot more printed detail than the one on the left side. And that's honestly to be expected since, I mean, in 4 years, you do kind of expect to see a little bit more improvement on printed details. But make no mistake, the one on the left side does have a decent amount of printed detail, which I will show momentarily. All right, well, I couldn't figure out any better way to do this, so I'm just going to have to hold both models like this. The top of the fuselage is where you can see, I guess, the majority of the difference in printed details, and I just realized I'm holding them wrong. The model on the left side is actually the one from 2022, and the model on the right side is the one from 2018. So you can see the one from 2022 has a lot more defined detail around the exit here, the door, and up the top of the aircraft you can see another red mark thing. I'm not sure what this is, but that's all of that is missing on the 2018 model. You can see the door isn't as detailed and that red marking is missing. So yeah, there is a difference in printed detail that is there. But aside from that, for the rest of the fuselage detail, everything is mostly the same, except for on the 2022 model, there is a sort of printed line that goes around this curve of the wing here, and this extends to the bottom of the aircraft, which I'll show later. This is missing on the 2018 model. In terms of aerial features, this is also a notable difference. On the 2018 model, of course, there's the 3 antennas, all of which I believe are the same size, and there is a printed sat dome here, which is supposed to be 3D. On the 2022 model, the antennas follow a similar profile, except for the one back here is a little bit smaller. This one is the same size as the rest of the ones on the fuselage, but this one is smaller. And there is also a 3D sat dome there, so that was an upgrade in terms of detail. Moving on to the wings, on the top we have the 2018 model, and on the bottom we have the 2022 model. The wings overall look pretty much the same. I really don't recognize any major differences at all. Maybe a slight difference in the shade of white that the wings are painted, but aside from that, there's really no difference. And both wings look very nicely detailed. There's lots of printed, painted, and molded detail on both. So honestly, to tie for that one, both of them look good, and I really can't make any distinctions between them. The story is pretty much the same for the bottom of the aircraft, or specifically the bottom of the wings. You can see there's really no printed detail on the bottom of the wings for both examples, and there's really no difference in molded or painted detail either. While we're down here though, I'd like to talk about a bit of the details on the fuselage and just the printing overall. So here you can see on the 2018 model, it's just the Delta logo, the Gemini logo, and a very few sparsely put printed details. However, on the right side on the 2022 model, you can see the printing is a lot more extensive. Here's the line I was talking about on the fuselage earlier. You can see it right here. Yeah, printing is far more extensive. You can see more details up here at the front. Yeah, it just looks a lot more detail down here as well. So there was a significant upgrade in printed detail on the 2022 example. You can also see it on the bottom of the engines. There's no printed detail on the 2018 example, and on the 2022 example, there is a lot more printed detail down there. Interestingly, for the rears of both aircraft, you can see that the 2018 model is much higher up in terms of the rear section of the aircraft than the 2022 model. So I'm not sure which one's more accurate. I believe the 2022 one is actually more accurate, or scratch that note. I'll explain why I believe I'm just confused with both. But I think I know why the 2022 one is a bit shorter. Overall, there's really not that much of a difference back here, except for maybe this one line of printed detail in the 2022 example. But aside from that, they're pretty much the same. Both of them look pretty good. They look pretty solid, and I think just like the wings, they're tied back here as well. As for the engines in the 2018 example look like they're a little bit bigger than the ones in the 2022 example. The 2022 example, I mean, the engines are a little bit smaller, but I think they're both relatively accurately sized. I'm not sure which one is more accurate, but I'm more inclined to believe the 2018 one is a bit more accurate, since I know the engines on the A220 are quite large with respect to the aircraft. So there's that. Fan blades look good on both. And as I said earlier, at the bottom of the aircraft, there is a lot more printed detail on the 2022 example, and the top of the engines are no exception. You can see a lot more detail up on the engines on the 2022 example instead of the 2018 one, which has no printed detail. So yeah, same conclusion as earlier, a lot more printed detail on the 2022 example. Now for probably the most distinct difference between both models, the landing gear. On the left side, you can definitely see the evident plastic Herpa wings landing gear, and these wheels don't roll. They're not exactly the best quality, and I mean, they're plastic, so it's really ironic that Gemini says that their models are made entirely out of die-cast metal. However, on the 2022 example, you can see the wheels are much more detailed, and these actually do roll smoothly too, although I'd imagine some of them are a little bit stiff. The wheels do roll, which is a nice feature. It's not anything that is required, especially of a model of this size, but it is a nice touch. So the landing gear were upgraded, however, this came at a cost. You might have seen it earlier, and now you can see it again. The nose landing gear on the 2022 example is much longer than it should be. The one on the 2018 example is properly sized. However, the one on the 2022 one, it's just too tall. And that's why I told you I was confused at the tail sections. Since the landing gear on the 2022 example is taller, it caused the tail section to be a little bit lower than the 2018 one. And I'm not sure if it would make much of a difference if this was properly sized, but yeah. So even though the gear were upgraded, it came at a cost because the landing gear ended up being too tall. So that's one of the major flaws of the 2022 example when being compared to the 2018 example. Alright, here's the best I can do at showing you the front of both of the aircraft side to side. On the left side, you can see the 2018 example gear balance, even though it kind of looks messed up due to the box being a little bit slanted. It looks mostly good. You can see the landing gear, the main gear pointed inwards toward the fuselage, and there's the wheels can't roll, so really can't adjust to that and create a proper balance. But wing flex for the main wings looks okay. The wing flex for the horizontal stabilizers, though, looks a little bit asymmetrical there, so that was a bit of a quality issue in that one. On the 2022 example, gear balance also looks mostly symmetrical. This time the gears are straight up on that one, so that is a bit of an upgrade when compared to the other one. Wing flex also looks symmetrical. The wing flex on both looks pretty much identical, and really, cockpit window printing looks solid on both. It might be a little bit slanted on the 2018 example, but on the 2022 example, it looks symmetrical and it looks like the way it should be. Well, that really finishes everything. If I missed something or if I kind of took too long in a certain section of the comparison, I apologize in advance. Like I said earlier, this was one of my first times doing this, so I still need to get the hang of it. But now time for my personal opinion and what I think of it. So both models are pretty solid. They're obviously the 2022 one is a bit more detailed with respect to printed detail, and honestly, I'm not really sure which one I'd recommend overall. Honestly, I'd probably go for the 2022 one because overall it's a little bit better than the 2018 one, but the 2018 one is still pretty solid as a model nonetheless. So if you prefer mostly correct aircraft proportions, especially with regards to the landing gear, and you don't mind the landing gear being plastic and not rolling, then get the 2018 example. It's still a solid model nonetheless, but it's not as detailed as the 2022 example. If you're more for details and just overall more features and rolling landing gear, then get the 2022 example. Personally, myself, this video is mostly opinion based, and I know I try to make my videos as unbiased as possible, but in my opinion, I think the 2022 one is a little bit better than the 2018 one. So I'll be getting rid of the 2018 one and keeping my 2022 example. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope I covered everything that I could have. If you see anything that you'd like to mention down below in the comment section or any suggestions, by all means, please do. I'll take any suggestions to improve my content. And that's all I really have to say. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more airplane and siren content. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in my next video.